You are now entering a dangerous liberty zone where God-given natural rights are held sacred and exercised. This is your warning. Tyranny, fascism, and censorship will not be tolerated. Ideas will be exchanged freely. Rigorous debate and open discourse is encouraged. If you are weak and your beliefs are fragile, you should leave now. Prepare yourself. We are now live on the Dangerous Liberty Podcast. What's going on, folks? Happy Wednesday, everybody that's out there. And I'm coming to you live from the great state of Georgia. So, as a matter of fact, I wasn't planning on doing a podcast tonight. But at the last minute, I decided to go ahead and do that. I didn't have a lot prepared, but there is a few things going on that I want to talk to you guys about. So make sure you hit that like, subscribe, all that good stuff. One thing I was just talking to Wyatt Darrell about, folks, please make sure that if you have the notifications set on our channel, also go there and you have some different options. Select all. YouTube, number one, I still don't think that YouTube is going to notify you of all of our content. But again, if you don't select all, they're only going to notify you of monetized content. Most of our podcasts aren't monetized. Most of our content is not monetized. So if you would like to be notified when we do have these podcasts and other content, select all. It just helps things out. Definitely want to say hi to everybody over there in the comments. Jason, Top Gun Sponsor, Jeff Johnson. Jeff, I'm going to try to come see you at some point in time. I almost just surprised you because I was nearby. Wyatt, MPCV, Ted Boyett, cool stuff. Robert Cochran, and anybody else that's jumping in, make sure you say hi. Just so you guys know, we kind of did an emergency run to Georgia where Summer's parents are. Had some medical things going on there. Everything's okay. Things are stable, and we're probably going to be headed back to West Virginia here shortly, but this was an unexpected trip. We do have people in the shop running some things, doing some things, shipping orders. So hopefully none of your orders are going to be delayed or anything like that. But I did want to just kind of jump in and talk about some of these things going on, specifically with the big, beautiful bill, and try to manage some people's expectations, or at least what I think is going on with all that stuff. So we'll jump into some of that stuff tonight. Tony, it's good to see you. Cool stuff. Cool stuff is here. He's here. Thank God. No, thanks for jumping in. I also have some insider information from the ATF side of things. I know a lot of people have some expectations when it comes to SBRs and specifically, or more importantly, suppressors. This bill's kind of going back and forth in both the House and Senate. Who knows what other changes are going to be? But I want to share with you not only some information that I have on how this may or may not affect suppressors. I don't think SBRs are going to get put back into the bill. I'm also not that optimistic when it comes to suppressors either, and I'll talk a little bit about that. What's going on? Drones under 2A, good to see you. Poncho Zorch, good to see you. Ken 75TW, good to see you. Anybody else in the comments, make sure you guys say hi. And, again, I don't have a lot to cover tonight. But what I will say too is I'll also open up the floor if you guys have any other questions. The other thing, I've kind of hinted a little bit about our custom rifles. That is in full effect. We'll be getting some of the first batches of barreled actions in. So I want to kind of give you guys that are on this podcast. We'll end up sending out in the newsletter, but I want to give you guys kind of first insider information on that, as well as the opportunity to jump in line and or get a custom rifle for us. I want to talk to you a little bit about what's different with what we're doing, why we're doing that, why we're expanding our offerings beyond just Masterpiece Arms. And we'll kind of take it from there. So thank you, Ted. I appreciate that. We could definitely use some prayers. Again, it's nothing life-threatening, but there's some serious things going on that's kind of unfortunate. Good to see you, Tosh Miller. Anyways, so going back to the big beautiful bill. We all know that these different bills have come up. HSA, among others, to remove suppressors. And now we had the Short Act, and all this stuff was going to be kind of thrown into the big, beautiful bill and hopefully get some of this stuff passed and get it taken off the NFA. That has continued to evolve with what's going on. How many people complaining about the registers of NFA items own a suppressor or SBR or others? We can talk about that, Dave. There's some like under the umbrella of suppressors, SBRs, the Second Amendment, gun rights. Man, there's so many things so many different rabbit holes that we can go down, right? And some of it has to do with hypocrisy, some of it has to do with some practicality, and just being pragmatic about what we have currently, the hoops that we have to jump through. But going back to this big, beautiful bill, and I put on some bug spray that clearly is not working with these Georgia bugs right now because they're kicking my ass. Anyways, I am not very optimistic with this for a couple different reasons. Number one of the big things that has to do with is the fact that they already have legislated into effect a huge tax revenue source. So I've always been a little apprehensive and a little pessimistic when it comes to actually getting some of these things off of the NFA. I wish, instead of doing this, I wish there would be a more serious challenge to the NFA at the Supreme Court level. I know some of these things, or parts of these things, have been brought before the Supreme Court. I just don't think it's been fully vetted to how constitutional the NFA is. And another thing I'm just going to throw out there, I've been dealing with family issues, trying to keep up with work and juggling a lot of balls. So if I get any of this information technically incorrect with the status of the current bill and all those other things, feel free to correct me down in the comments, which I know you guys will. But just know that, again, there's chances are, I just looked at a few different news articles. Chances are I might be a little out of touch with some of this stuff, but again, correct me if I'm wrong on the current status of some of these things. This is a discussion. That's why we do these live. So anyways, again, I'm just not that optimistic that this is going to end up happening. And I know that people are going to feel lied to. The only thing that really gives me optimism is actually Don Jr. Don Jr. is a big proponent of suppressors, especially. And then, of course, I don't know where he stands on SBRs. But again, between the kind of where the Democrats are and how this is definitely a hill that they're willing to die on when it comes to gun safety, or whatever you want to call it, a clear violation of our constitutional rights that unfortunately has become the commonplace here in the United States. We've accepted these things. We have allowed these things to take place. And by the way, a lot of these things took place under Republicans, Ronald Reagan to be one of them. The time to stop, not necessarily the NFA, but the GCA was in 1986, right? That was when we were supposed to stop these things. So Republicans have sold us out time and time again. And Republicans have been a major part, to include the NRA, by the way. And I'm just going to kind of go off on several tangents here because I have a lot to say about this stuff. The NRA has sold us out more than once. I think they're a part of the problem when it comes to the culture of gun rights being violated multiple times. So we need to understand that, and understand that I will tell you right now, if the Republicans are going to compromise on anything when it comes to the big, beautiful bill, the first thing that's going to go is any sort of portions of this bill that would take suppressors off the GCA, the NFA. And I'm just not that optimistic about it. The other part of this that I see problematic for them is, I just talked to somebody, a good friend of mine works at the ATF. He's been on this podcast before. He's not somebody that I'm even going to say his name right now. But he's been on this podcast before, and he actually works in the department that kind of handles these things. And so I started asking him some questions when it came to, okay, let's say this passes, as far as how is this going to be implemented? Now, there's a lot of speculation out there. I know I've already heard people stating supposition as facts. Like, oh, well, it's real easy. You're just going to do a 4877. It's going to be this, going to be this. Like, you don't know any of that stuff, because I can tell you right now, the ATF doesn't know those things. They don't know how this is actually going to be put into practice. and how this is going to be executed. Now, right now, what they're talking about, as far as I know, they're talking about it's still going to be under the NFA, and it's still going to require a tax stamp, but the tax stamp fee is going to be $0. Well, that creates some issues. So if it still requires a tax stamp, then do we have to pay $0, and do we still have to wait for approval, and do we still have to get a tax stamp before we can receive a suppressor or other class 3 item? And the answer is they don't know. They don't know how that's going to work. So there's that problem with it. The other issue that I see with this is the fact that, well, if they're taking off the NFA completely, that makes sense. But that's not, by the way, that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about allowing the tax stamp to be $0. So that makes things pretty darn complicated. And then on top of that, if we have to wait for a tax stamp, how are they going to get that approved? How is that all going to work? Are you still going to have to require fingerprints? So, again, I asked the people at the ATF, and they don't know. They don't know because, number one, they're waiting on legislators to finalize this stuff. And then on top of that, once that comes in, then they got to figure out a way to execute the plan or whatever it comes down to. So, I think there's a lot of unknowns on this, but I also am still, again, I'm still very pessimistic that is actually going to go through. So, that's kind of most of my thoughts on that. There's still some other issues going on with us as dealers and things like that we're going to have to implement. And again, is this still going to require an extended background check, but it's not going to get paid for? Or is it just going to be, is it going to be a normal freaking background check that you're going to do, a NICS check that you're going to do right then and there, and then we have to just wait for a tax stamp? Nobody knows. So, and anybody, I'm telling you right now, anybody that says they know, they don't. They just don't. And this is all speculation when it comes down to it. And we'll actually see if this goes through. I do think that this is the best chance we've ever had to see any of this come into reality. But I do think that it is a clear violation of our gun rights. Number one, suppressors shouldn't be part of the GCA. They shouldn't, again, on the NFA, suppressors should be an accessory, just like any other muzzle device, as far as I'm concerned. And that's a whole nother problem that the ATF has kind of went back and forth on throughout the history of this issue, is that, they classify it as a firearm, but yet they say it's an accessory. So, they apply the Second Amendment when they want to, and then they don't when they don't want to. So they've gone back and forth, and they're speaking out of both sides of their mouth on the issue of suppressors. So I would just really, I would temper your expectations on this getting passed. I hope it does. I mean, it'd be, number one, I think it'd be a big win for the Second Amendment. Anything that we can get with that. But it'll also be good for business for us. We sell suppressors. We're in there ordering suppressors as we speak, left and right. We've put in multiple orders. Either way, I think the demand for suppressors are going to continue to rise. People are seeing the benefits of them. There's actual, utility to a suppressor outside of, just secretly and quietly going out and, assassinating people or whatever else. All the nonsense that the left tries to perpetrate with and propagate when it comes to suppressors. I am kind of half-ass reading through some of your comments that I'll start throwing up there. And, well, first of all, Dave, I'll address your comment. You said, how many people complain about the registers of NFA items own a suppressor or SBR or other? I don't know exactly what you mean by that, but the fact is I do think that the NFA and all of that is clearly a registry. I also think that having to submit the background forms that we do, I'm having a brain fart right now. I just said it a few minutes ago, the 4473 or whatever it is. The fact that we have to maintain those, that is a registry. So I think that whole idea that we're not registering weapons is a lie unto itself. Whether, there's clearly a registry taking place, but basically what they're doing is they're just subcontracting that out to, FFL holders. We're having to keep those records indefinitely So, you know, it's a real issue. You know, the fact is, when we're talking about SBRs, we're talking about suppressors. Yes, we are registering those items. And again, just like I said, we're doing the same thing with firearms, by, with, and through FFL holders. That personally is not going to stop me from doing everything I can to being as well equipped as I think I need to be to protect my family, to execute the purpose of the Second Amendment. You know, again, not only is the Second Amendment there to protect us, but is also there to protect our homeland from the invasion of a foreign army or military. And on top of that, it's also there to protect us from, it is there to protect our ability to overthrow through military action, through force, a tyrannical government. So I personally, I don't care about some of those issues. If you can afford to get a suppressor, regardless of the outcome of this, I would highly suggest that you do so. Not only is it a right, and I understand that the government is violating our rights by imposing many of these restrictions upon us, but I still think that we have a duty to exercise those rights and to be as well equipped as we can be. And again, for some of you, you don't care about suppressors, you don't care about short barrel rifles, all of those things. I get it. What I will say, what I can tell you from insider information from the ATF is that pistol braces, if you want to get a short barreled pistol and put a pistol brace on it, look, you are going to be in the clear. I don't think that is ever going to be challenged again. Definitely not in the foreseeable future. So if you want to get a 6-inch, a 8-inch, a 12-inch, a 10-inch rifle with a pistol brace, you absolutely can, and you should. And that is definitely a way to not have to go through the hoops that the NFA and Class 3 requirements are going to require you to do so. I can tell you, Jason, Summer's going to kick your ass on that comment. Yeah, so this is another thing. You know, again, fingerprints, the biometrics, all those things that we're having to jump. Again, I think that is a clear violation of our rights, our Fourth Amendment rights, as well as our Second Amendment rights. The only silver of goods that they're saying it's not a tax that they care about. It's the registry, and the USSC has repeatedly said the NFA is only constitutional as a tax, but that's 5 years. Okay. Yeah, look, I think the I can't say enough for every bit of good that the NRA does, and they do, right? They do some good. There's no doubt about it. I would say that they are also equally responsible for so much bad that has happened when it comes to gun legislation in this country. There are a bunch of freaking FUDs that are, you know, they're the guys that say you don't need a 30-round magazine, really, you know, that 30-round magazines don't violate, you know, the banning of 30-round magazines. These are all conversations, arguments I've had with people. You know, you don't really need this or you don't really need that. Look, the NRA has done tremendous damage to gun rights in this country. Have they done some good? Yes. But picking and choosing on some, you know, ultimately the NRA is funded by members sending in dues, and it's up to you guys to decide. There's nothing, you know, I think capitalism is the ultimate form of democracy, and you know, the NRA only exists because people continue to fund them. I think there's plenty of other better organizations that are doing, whether it's the GCA, FPC, a bunch of folks out there, a bunch of different organizations that are doing much better work, that are more consistent, that don't pick and choose, that I think will they'll continue to do a lot better and do more for your money. By the way, that's another problem that I see with the NRA. They got so big, so bloated that for a long time they were wasting a lot of money and not spending it very well. Yeah, this is one of my concerns too, Ken. Whatever we got going on with this big, beautiful bill and whatever we do legislatively, I want it to be permanent because you're absolutely right. And that's another problem that I have with executive order. When whatever executive orders on gun control, including this current ATF, I will tell you, again, knowing some people in there, I could tell you the intent, the attitude behind the current ATF is completely different than it has been in the past. Their directives are completely different, right? But that can change with the next administration. And that's a real problem because for whatever reason, what we see is that anytime that Trump undoes a previous executive order, he gets taken to court and they try to stop it and all this other stuff, which is continuing to happen, even though we had the recent Supreme Court ruling on this issues. So anyways, but what we don't see is when we have something like the Biden administration or the Obama administration come in and enact all these executive orders that, from my perspective, definitely violate the Second Amendment. There's almost nothing happens. And the Supreme Court is wholly unreliable on these issues too. We see justices like Amy Coney Barrett and Chief Justice Roberts and a couple of these other guys that, man, they don't seem very consistent on protecting our Second Amendment rights. Yeah, I do think that there is something to the fingerprints issue. They definitely want fingerprints. What's going on, Otter? Good to see you, buddy. No, I do not want to end the filibuster. I think that's short-sighted. Once we end that filibuster, then, we're going to see a lot of things enacted and we will. Look, we're going to have, it's probably most likely that we are going to have we could have a Democrat president, House, and Senate after Trump. So I don't want the filibuster ended. I don't think that's a good thing under any administration. I want the minority to be able to push back against the majority when it makes sense. And a good example of this is, first of all, if we didn't have the filibuster, our Supreme Court would look wholly and completely different. Well, look, and I've had a lot of discussions with lawyers in the last couple of years, and we've had Randy Barnett and a couple other constitutional lawyers, scholars, and professors on. I understand our perception of the Second Amendment. Look, I'm a Second Amendment absolutist, but that is not, even some of the most conservative lawyers out there, law scholars out there, disagree with this. And there's a lot of precedent when it comes to gun control, unfortunately, in this country, even during the time that the Second Amendment was passed and during the time of our founders. Like, there was still gun control. We need to have Randy Barnett back on again. He can kind of go through some of those things and what was considered acceptable even at the time. So, there's that. The Range says, I resigned my lifetime NRA and had to go through a whole process to detach myself from that organization. I didn't even know that you could. I also have a lifetime membership that I got back in the, early 2000s, something like that. I would happily resign that lifetime membership if I could. And maybe they'll stop calling me as well. Charlton almost tricked me into coming back. Ted Boyette says, I love the new KGM. I'm glad. This is also a great question. Will suppressor prices change both with or without HPA passing? That is an interesting question. That's something I was talking to Summer about either yesterday or today. So the demand, if suppressors come off the NFA and or tax stamps go down to zero, there's going to be a huge increase in demand. What I would like to think is that suppressor manufacturers are going to be able to increase their manufacturing. I don't know how there's going to definitely be a lag, right? Without a doubt. I think if this gets passed, every suppressor on the shelf is going to be gone, and you're going to see back orders of 12 to 18 months at a minimum. And then after that, who knows? I think they'll increase manufacturing, they'll decrease the wait times, and ultimately, I would like to think that they'll ultimately be able to continue to meet the demand. So I don't know. That's a great question. That's up to the manufacturers, how much they're willing to spend, how much they're willing to invest in new manufacturing, expanding, employment, finding the people. That's another issue altogether. Like if you double the size of your factory so that you can produce more suppressors, the real question is, can you find quality people to fill those roles? And then does that affect your quality control? Does that affect your quality of production? Those are all real concerns that I have when it comes to drastically increasing overall suppressor production. Yeah, Boss Hog, I'm with you, man. Listen, I feel you on this. I agree that I think that number one, suppressors should not be defined by the U.S. government as a firearm, because in other legal cases where they've been challenged, they go back and say that it's an accessory. And both those definitions in the GCA and the GCA as well the NFA, both those definitions are used back and forth. They're considered a firearm, and then sometimes they're considered accessory. So I agree with that. I don't know that that's going to happen. I just don't know. I like that. Those are arguments that are going to have to be taken to a federal judge and or Supreme Court, and I don't see that happening anytime soon. But I'm with you. I agree with you 100%. Yeah, I mean, drones under 2A, Jeff, I agree that they can change the tax now. They can change it back later. That's true. And then they can also retroactively, like, let's say they decide, hey, you know what? You're going to pay $0 for a tax stamp. And by the way, you're just going to have to do a NICS background check. We're not going to make you send in fingerprints or anything else. And you're good to go. Well, we obviously, if that is done through, inputting basic legislation, if that is not clear cut in the legislation, it's basically going to take an executive order, and or it will be up to an agency to determine how they're going to execute that, as long as it's backed by the executive branch. And then all these legal challenges will be taken later. But you're absolutely right. Until they're actually removed from the NFA and they're no longer considered, look, they should be considered like every other muzzle device. That's what a suppressor should. And we can say should, could, what we think, all these things, that doesn't make it reality, and it doesn't change the law. So, I'm just, I wish it was that simple, right? Yeah, and you know what? This is another challenge that we're going to have as well. Is so, this is kind of like the double-edged sword of this. If suppressors are considered firearms, there is a argument where not being able to buy a suppressor is violating the Second Amendment. But if you take them, if they're no longer considered firearms, which they shouldn't be, they're an accessory. It is definitely good. Even now, to some extent, it's left to the states to decide their own state laws, but that is part of our federalist system, right? And I'm actually glad about that to some extent. Do I think we should still have supremacy law, and we still should consider all these things protected under the Second Amendment? But again, between Supreme Court precedent, other federal rulings, things like that, some of this nonsense has slipped in and become, it's become precedent when it comes to the law, and these are accepted. But I think ultimately, there definitely needs to be, and we saw this during COVID to some extent, and we still are seeing it kind of. But man, the fact is like we need more people to start moving out of these shithole states. You know, if you feel like a state is violating your constitutional rights, I highly suggest that you move. And I know that's super easy to say, and it's a lot harder to do. People have family, jobs, all those things. But I do think there needs to be a bigger movement toward that. You know, it is what it is. A little off topic, but which of MPA's barrel contours would you recommend for a 20-inch 6.5 Creedmoor for uses? I mean, it just depends on what you are trying to get out of that. Look, their competition contour is a 1.25 straight taper down to like 0.9 or 1 inch or something like that. I mean, it's a heavy barrel. Like, you're always going to get better performance out of a heavier barrel. I mean, this is just a fact. They're less subject to harmonic change. They're less subject to thermal shifts. I would go with basically as thick as a barrel as you can handle, and you're going to get better performance, period. So that's what I would say, Texas Roadhouse. Yeah, again, Dave, I agree, man. It freaking kicks me in the nuts every time that I have to pay a $200 tax stamp fee and go through the hoops that we have to. And then you got to put it on a trust, and you got to take it off, remove it, all the things that go on with that. And then if you want to, sell a suppressor, now they have to go through the same process. Like, it is definitely, it's nonsense, right? I do think when it comes to a $200 tax stamp, that is onerous to say the least. And I do think, that is something that, our founding fathers would end up, that'd be worth rebelling over. And I'm not suggesting that we should do that. We're not there anywhere close to that, but I'm just saying it is onerous and it's stupid, and it should be just on its face a violation of our not only Second Amendment right, but the fact that the government is saying, hey, you can do, and this is the whole ridiculous thing about it. It's like, oh, this thing is so dangerous that we have to control it. But if you just pay us $200, then we'll give it to you. So it is a poll tax. It's like, okay, you can vote, but you know what? All you got to do is pay us $200, and then somehow that's not considered a violation of rights. It makes no sense whatsoever. I'm leaning independent now, not because I think they'll fix everything, but because I'd like to at least pretend I'm not part of the problem anymore. Yeah, I get you. I definitely don't. There's almost nothing that I can relate to when it comes to the left, right? The Democrat side of things. I definitely don't find myself agreeing with a majority of the things Republican. It's definitely, out of the two-party system, it's definitely what I relate to the most. But there's definitely some serious problems there, right? And I don't even think Trump fits into that bill. Like, he doesn't fit that mold either. So, I definitely, we need a viable third party, and there's even problems with that, right? So I hear you. Well, this is a great point. The new SB5 brace looks very stocky. LOL. This was a funny conversation that I had with someone within the ATF that actually determines these things and forces their part of that department that determines what is what, if it's legal, if it's a brace, if it's a stock. And the craziest thing about all that is it's completely arbitrary. So, the conversation that we had was something like, people get prosecuted all the time because, they're 3D printing stocks, but they're saying the file name is whatever, something brace. It's a brace. But the person I was talking to was like, hey, it's actually not a brace, it's a stock. I'm like, well, what's the difference? Because it's really weird that, like, how do you define a stock versus a brace? And there is no definition, guys. It's completely arbitrary. And that's the insanity of all of this, and why we need to understand that government is so dysfunctional, and that government's never going to provide us any decent solutions to anything. And I wish Democrats and more people in America would see this, because that is the real problem. It's idiots all the way up. Like, it's just fucking morons from the top to the bottom that run everything. but then on top of that, there's some really smart people in think tanks and people like George Soros and things like that. There are brilliant people involved in this system that know how to manipulate people on both sides, but they're not the people that can do anything for us. They're the people that are working against us in so many different ways. We clearly don't have the same brilliant people coming up with strategies to, to take, do things that we would want to continue to expand freedom. Now, I'm even kind of reeling myself in just a little bit here because we have seen essentially an expansion of gun rights. So there's a little bit about that. But back to the stock thing, I'm like, so how do you guys determine what is a brace and what is a stock? It's like, oh, well, this, that, or the other. And then he also said, hey, look, this is kind of a touchy subject because of all the court cases that have went up because of, pistol brace rule and all these things. So we're just leaving those things alone. I'm like, so you guys are potentially prosecuting people that have a 3D printed stock that they're calling a brace, but it's actually, and it's on a rifle. So those people are potentially getting prosecuted because of that. But what about, like, I brought up the same thing. Like, I was like, SB Tactical, some of their braces look an awful lot like stocks. He's like, well, yeah, because, they're a company. I'm like, hold on. So you're telling me that basically the way things are, this has nothing to do with law or law definitions, because these things are so ambiguous, and it's crazy that this is how things are being regulated here in the United States. I'm like, so I can create a company today and I can create what is essentially a stock for all intents and purposes, but I can call it a brace, and then you guys aren't going to come after me. He's like, probably not. And he's like, the main thing that they're looking for is some sort of Velcro or something like that. You could potentially say, hey, this is going to be strapped to an arm. And of course, there's the brace that's a fin that's made to like stabilize up against the arm, but it looks just like a stock. So again, completely arbitrary, completely. I mean, it's just, there's no legal definition to most of these things, and it's yeah. Yeah, look, I mean, Carrie, if right now, I don't think SBRs at all are going to be addressed in the big, beautiful bill unless something dramatically changes in the House. I haven't seen if they've come up with if they've made any additions or made any changes that are going back to the Senate. But as I understand it now, nothing's going to change with SBRs at all. So, that's that. Tosh, I don't know about that. You're probably not wrong. I just don't think that, because there are, again, I was just talking to a lawyer about this a couple days ago. There are a lot of $0 taxes, by the way. I didn't know that until I talked to this lawyer. I was surprised by that. So there's a lot of $0 taxes on the books as it is. Yeah, the NRA was stronger, but I don't think they were looking out for our interests. Look, I remember as a little kid, I think some of my first, some of the first videos I ever saw, or commercials rather, that I ever saw, I'm talking like in the early 80s, right? I remember the NRA talking about how the Second Amendment was there to protect your hunting rights. That's what I heard growing up as a kid, and those are commercials directly from the Second Amendment. And the NRA, the commercials I heard from the NRA, the NRA, I've looked into this, and I need to research this more specifically, but the NRA didn't push back a lot on the GCA back in 1986. And the NRA, number one, there's two things that came from the NRA. Number one, they started calling, after they decided they were going to sort of try to protect AR-15s from being labeled as assault, they're the idiots that came out and said, oh, this is a sporting rifle. Folks, there's nothing that irritates me more than these idiots that think they're going to win a legal argument using semantics, right? No, it's not a sporting rifle. That is you can call it a combat rifle, you can call it a black rifle of death. I don't care what you want to call it. The fact is that we have a right to this. And one of the main and the fundamental protections that the Second Amendment gives to us is to protect ourselves from an invading military, to protect our homeland, and to protect ourselves against a government, a tyrannical government. You cannot have a government of, for, and by the people that is wholly more equipped. They have all of these weapons while you leave the common people to where they are in a state to where they can't defend themselves against a much more equipped government. Forget about F-16s and all the other stupid arguments that I hear people talk about, like, oh, how are you going to defend yourself against an F-16? Well, you know what? The Taliban did it. The Taliban did it, but you know what they had? They had, whether you want to call them assault rifles, whether you want to call them battle rifles, whatever you want to call them, as long as we have arms, and again, I am completely all for the average citizen being able to own. I don't care if it's a belt fed. I don't care if it's a machine gun. You should be able to own that thing, because again, if the government can own it, so can we. And if you want to go back, and I do think there should be some legislation, but again, I think this should be a redefinition of the Second Amendment. Whether they want to go back and change a definition, have a constitutional amendment, get 2/3 of the states together and talk about, hey, you know what? The Second Amendment didn't cover F-18s, didn't cover nuclear weapons. That's fine. But I think that should be redefined. I don't think we should take something that's there and redefine it as we go. That's the problem that we're in the middle of. But again, if local police, if the local National Guard, if whatever weapons they have access to, the people should have access to as well. That's just a fact, because that's the only way that we can defend ourselves against that type of force, if and when those forces are ever turned on the American people. Like Ketanji Brown's last statement on it was laughable. The NRA, like a haunted house built on a pile of lobbyist cash, echoing the sound of thoughts, prayers, and empty policies. I don't disagree with that. I think there's a lot corrupt and inept when it comes to the NRA. Yeah, look, folks, I'm with Ken on this. Like, I think you should be equipping yourself. You never know what's going to happen. You know, everybody's kind of waiting to see if suppressors or SBRs are going to come off the NFA and GCA. I wouldn't wait for that. Like, go out and equip yourself however you want, because, you know, we could get, everything could turn within a few years. And next thing you know, we could be having this conversation 3 or 4 years from now where they're saying, hey, you know what? We're going to make suppressors and short-barreled rifles completely illegal. That's a conversation that we could very well be having in just a few years. And don't think that isn't possible, because, you know, we see the pendulum swing back and forth. And right now we have some momentum, and hopefully this will get passed. And we'll take what we can get. But the fact is, you can't resist if you don't have it. That's part of the issue, because I can tell you right now, if 5 years from now, 6 years from now, I don't think that it's unlikely that they'll end up passing legislation where they're going to ban firearms, you know, labeled assault weapons or suppressors or SBRs or any of that stuff, to where they're going to require us to turn those in. But what they will do is they possibly will grandfather you in. And that's the thing that I'm counting on. Like, I'm going to get everything I possibly can, however I want, whenever I want. And then we can worry about all that other stuff down the road. If later on down the road, like let's say next month, let's say I bought 3 suppressors, I paid the tax stamp now. 3 months from now, come to find out they reduce it down to 0. Big deal. Okay, so I wasted $600 or whatever I paid. Yeah, that kind of sucks, but you know what? There's no way to predict what's going to happen here. So, you know, again, this is just another case of government, whatever side, or Republican, Democrat, whatever, dangling a carrot out in front of everybody, and us, you know, waited with bated breath, and then making decisions based on what the government's going to do. Like, we can't operate like that, and we shouldn't. Yeah, again, I kind of agree with Jeff on this. You know, SBR laws are moot, and go get yourself whether you want a 10-inch, 12-inch, whatever it is, go get yourself one of those with a pistol brace. You're gonna be perfectly fine. Tony says, if acts are included in the BBB and I purchase a suppressor from Paramount as a non-West Virginia resident, would you still need to ship to FFL in my state, or could I pick up the shop? So this is kind of the problem, Tony. We don't know what the final language of this is going to be, and then the ATF still has to determine how they're going to execute and how, to some extent, they translate that and interpret that and how they're going to implement these things. So it all determines on what the language of the bill is. So who knows? My hope is the common sense thing to do is that you'll be able to go in, buy a suppressor. Well, no, even if it passes the way it is, you go in, you buy a suppressor, you pay $0 for a tax stamp, you go through a basic NICS background check, just like you do with a firearm, and then you are basically emailed a tax stamp, because apparently you still have to have a tax stamp. And if that is the case, it may still be to where we still have to send it to your FFL or class 3 dealer. So I don't know. I just don't know. Maybe they'll include some language where it's like, hey, if it's legal to buy in your state, then you can, so if, it's legal to have a suppressor, to buy suppressors in Florida, you can come to West Virginia, you can buy one there, and it's good to go. This is a problem that we currently have in, shipping things to California or whatever else. There's so many, and then it comes down to state law as well. That's another challenge that we're going to have with this. Mike, this is such a great point. Consider yourself lucky that you guys don't live here in Canada like I do. Even if I had my license for a handgun, they're banned for sale or transfer after September 22nd. Folks, we cannot allow ourselves to become Canada. We cannot allow ourselves to become Australia, the UK, most of Europe. We can't allow these things. So I'm glad to see that there's so much enthusiasm over these issues, and we're seeing more and more of that. And again, we currently have some momentum, but my concern is that momentum can be turned off real quick after a mass shooting event or whatever other propaganda that the media of the left is going to put out there. But we can't allow ourselves to become we can't allow ourselves to become California, but we can't allow ourselves to become Canada and Australia for sure. Amy Comey Barrett has been a huge disappointment, and so has Chief Justice Roberts too, by the way. Gorsuch, he's been a little iffy as well. District courts excel at dragging the infringement lawsuits out for years. SCOTUS is excellent at not taking the cases for decades and or denying those cases, which gets weird, right? Yeah. Gary is right. We'll always get thrown up here for sure. It's basically just like a super chat. Hey, folks, again, we got a bunch of people watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. But if you will, hit that like button. We appreciate the comments too. But hit that like button for us. I doubt this, Pat. Pat says, with a $0 tax stamp, could the government later take NFA items that don't have paid tax stamps? I don't think that's the way that would work. You can legislation and to somewhat executive order, you can do a lot, and it's going to happen until it gets challenged and determined at the Supreme Court whether or not it falls under the purview of the Constitution, whether it's constitutional or not. I mean, that's really the issue that we have here. Yeah, I do need some bug spray. I put some bug spray on, but it's not working against these Georgia bugs. I don't think so, Mark, because again, you still have this supremacy law. And again, I'm not a lawyer, so take any of the stuff I say as a grain of salt. But basically, Mark says it's possible for individual states to deregulate suppressors the same way that they can deregulate Schedule I narcotics. And I'm not even sure that they can deregulate Schedule I narcotics, not legally. Again, you can still be, the states can pass whatever laws they want until they're challenged. But again, you still are breaking federal law. And you can still be prosecuted. I mean, the states have a little bit of flexibility and we see this with sanctuary cities, right? So we have clear violations of federal law, but the states themselves are not prosecuting. They're using prosecutory discretion to decide which laws are going to enforce. So they can always do that, but it still doesn't not make you a felon, and then you can still be tried. And you can still come under, federal prosecution. So that's not necessarily a game. I mean, the fact is, what we got to do is we got to get all the Second Amendment rights determined at the Supreme Court level and put into federal legislation. That's what really needs to happen before we can solve any of this stuff, because it just gets confusing. I couldn't say it any better. The ATF, they're absolute. Look, no, the real morons here. It's actually the ATF are not morons. I'm going to take this back to some extent. Now, they do have some prosecutors and stuff. We saw some really crazy things happening under the Biden administration. But the real problem is our legislators, both on the Republican and Democrats, obviously, creating stupid laws and then making those laws ambiguous to where they're open to interpretation of different agencies that ultimately the executive branch that have to enforce these laws. And so that's where the real morons. We have some really good folks working at the ATF and many of these other agencies that are just roped into doing what they're told. That's what it comes down to. But for the record, I do think the ATF should be abolished. I mean, I think the ATF shouldn't exist. Yeah, this is exactly right. Taxes and daddy government being able to track you are all they need. Basically, what they've done is they've legalized bribes, right? It's like, hey, this is against the law, but if you pay us $200, we'll let you have it. This is so dangerous that we have to legislate again. We have to make it illegal unless you pay a small fee, give us, violate your Fourth Amendment rights by having to give us your fingerprints, do a onerous background check on you, wait all this time, all this other nonsense. But then you can have the supposed item that's so dangerous that we had to make it illegal in almost all states. On a neat side note, FA SEER kits are cheap and easy for HK. Not that I would ever suggest getting one. So I do want to talk about this. This was another discussion I had with my friend at the ATF. So first of all, just so you guys know, anything that converts a weapon to a full auto is considered the machine gun itself. So if you're getting SEER kits and things like that, and this is, again, I don't know how many people know. Some of you are going to know. Some of this is going to be news to you, right? So like Glock switches and things like that, that in and of itself, if you have that piece, doesn't have to be installed into the weapon. If you have those conversion kits, those themselves are considered machine guns, and you can be charged with owning a machine gun. And that is a federal crime. And they don't mess around with that. With that being said, what I can tell you is that the ATF is no longer enforcing anything to do with force reset triggers, which in of itself essentially is a full auto. So that is legal, but any of these conversion kits are not legal. So right now, I mean, the reality is you can go out and get an FRT. You can go out and get a 10-inch gun with a pistol brace on it, throw in an FRT, and you basically, are pretty much good to go. So that is the safe way to do it as things currently stand legally. I agree with this. I've been to the Infantry Museum in Columbus, Georgia. It's been a long time, but it is a great museum. Jason Fairbanks says technically airplanes or tanks are not arms, but any firearm is according to the definition of arms. Yeah, they also considered arms explosives and things like that. So I'm not necessarily talking about tanks, and I don't know. Even I mean, basically, tanks are basically rolling artillery. I agree. Look, I think most of the Americans would agree that we would give up the right to own tanks. We would give up the right to own, large munitions that would be carried and delivered by fixed wing aircraft or otherwise, right? But I do think ultimately we need to apply the Second Amendment as it currently states, and that's the problem. Kind of tangential. What are some rifle and handgun drills every armed citizen should be able to be somewhat proficient? Well, look, I think this tangential of that is I think you need training, right? I think you need coaching. I think that if you're serious about, I think if you're serious about defending yourself, you should be a little bit more serious about it and go get professional training. I can't tell you how many people that show up to our courses that are like, I've owned guns for years. I've been a cop. I was combat arms, whatever it is. And they show up and they're like the least proficient, most dangerous person on the course. So the first thing you need to do is learn the fundamentals. You need to learn the basics, right? I mean, starting off with knowing how to draw safely, correctly, whether that be from an outside the waistband holster or from concealed appendix carrier inside that's a whole nother skill set. So I think the first thing that people should do is go get some professional training. You don't know what you don't know. And a lot of the stuff that people were taught 20, 30 years ago is just terrible shit. And it also doesn't address the changes in equipment and optics and lights and lasers and all this other stuff that can be utilized at a higher level. I'm not saying that you need to jump into all that stuff right away, but I mean, people need to go get training. Here's one of the things this is a great example. So we have a level 1, level 2, level 3. We have different, we have progressive training. And I get these emails all the time where it's like, Gary, I've done this. I've trained with these people. Whatever background, right? I'm a freaking gun ninja, and I don't think I should have to come to a level 1 course. And I'm like, no, you're coming to a level 1 course. I don't know what you don't know. I don't know who's trained you. I don't know what you're doing. By the time we're in a level 2 course, we're doing, shooting on the move. We're doing dynamic drills. Like, I need to see you, and I need to make sure that you're on the same page as us, as everybody else in the range, just for safety concerns, both for myself, our students, and not only that, it just makes sense, right? There's a lot of different approaches you can take to training people in firearms, but not everybody starts the same spot or ends at the same spot. So, like, if you're training with us, I want everybody on the same page, right? We have a curriculum, and we have progressive curriculum, and the way that we do things is different from a lot of people. So one of the things I have told when people really press on this, like, no, I just don't think that I need to come to a level 1. By the way, our level 1s are not basic. Like, we push everybody individually. If you are a good shooter, you're going to leave there with something. I guarantee it, because we're going to push you very differently and make sure that we have you doing things that are different than other people on the range. But one of the things I've offered more than once, this is probably like a dozen times, in whether it's carbine or pistol courses or even long range courses, I've made them a deal. I said, look, you're such a good shooter that if you come to our level 1 courses, you should easily, because we have a culmination drill at the end of every course, you should easily be able to take Top Gun. If you take Top Gun at our level 1 course, I will refund your money for that course, and then you can attend level 2, level 3, or whatever else. Never once out of 10 or 15 people over the past 7 or 8 years, never once has somebody that said they shouldn't come to level 1 actually taking Top Gun, and we've had to give them a refund. Number 2, never once has somebody come to a level 1. I'm like, you know what? This was a waste of time for them. Like, they were low to mid pack of even beginners of the entire course. Like, out of that entire course of usually 12 to 18, 20 people, whatever we have going on that particular course, like, they're always like the bottom to mid pack as far as their proficiency and skill level. So go take a course, whether it's us. I definitely recommend us. I don't know what everybody else is doing, but come train with us. Hey, I just want to say I bought a 300 Win Mag because of you. It was first PR style rifle. A basic zeroing strategy video would be amazing. Well, Milton, you didn't buy a 300 Win Mag because of me, because I would have never recommended a 300 Win Mag. I'm glad you got your rifle. I'm glad you're liking it. I'm glad you're doing what you like to do. Sure. Yeah, we could definitely do a zeroing video. There's no doubt about that. And I'm not knocking 300 Win Mag, but that would have been not at the top of my priority list of what I would recommend, and I almost never recommend 300 Win Mag. But I'm glad. Cool. Awesome. So you can switch out barrels and all those good things. Well, 300 Win Mag is better than 300 PRC. You're welcome to be wrong, Jeff, and you often are. That's okay. I still love you. 300 PRC on every level destroys 300 Win Mag. It's 300 PRC is lighter recoil and has better BCs all across the board. There's so many better options, and 300 PRC, the gap between 300 PRC and 300 Win Mag is so vast that it's not even worth talking about. Gary, can't imagine myself being like Chris, LOL. Chris makes my blood pressure rise. I love Chris. I love arguing with him. He's a good dude. I am, man. These gnats are kicking my ass over here. It's like gnats. I don't even think it's mosquitoes. Yeah, that's what's happening here. We had a storm earlier. Now I got thunder and rain clouds above me. What would be your opinion for the best suppressor for 30 cal? I mean, that just depends. Like, what is that suppressor for? Are we talking about a precision rifle suppressor? Are we talking about a full auto rated? Like, I know everybody likes to pretend that we can get this like one suppressor that kind of does it all. They just don't exist, and that's not how this works. So, give me a little bit more intel on that TC. And look, I'll tell you, almost anything from Thunder Beast Arms or KGM is going to be great. But if you give me a little bit more information there, I can kind of narrow that down a little bit and guide you in the right direction. Yeah, I'm actually, I think everybody should own a tank. I think it should be a law that everybody should have to own and maintain a tank as well as an armory. Jeff, I don't know about that. So what I can tell you, I'd have to look that up. If you have in the United States, if you have an auto safety sear and you do not, even if you don't have if you do not have a altered AR, that is still considered the piece itself, the auto safety sear itself is considered a machine gun. That is what's considered the machine gun. They would have a stronger case against you if you had a modified weapon as well. But again, there's a lot of people don't know these specific laws. I don't know if there's something that would exclude how the H&K MP5. I don't know. I don't know how that is talked about. I'll actually get an answer for you direct from the ATF on that, Jeff, and I'll text that to you. No, see, I don't want mandatory service. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of a conscript army, right? I don't think that. I think if you want to destroy our military, that may have been a good thing if that was part of our culture from the beginning until now. But I think to implement some sort of mandatory service, like you think we have some really fruits and flakes destroying the military under the Biden administration and with all the woke nonsense and all that other stuff, it would get so much worse. And there would be so many people getting charges and dishonorable discharge. Like it would turn into a bureaucratic nightmare. So no, I don't. I wish it was a lot harder to get into the military and they paid people better because they can afford it. I wish I wish it was much more difficult to get into the military. And again, it was. I wish they would raise standards. That's what I want. I want to have the baddest ass military on the face of the planet. I don't want a bunch of people that don't want to be there. That's a good way to destroy a country from the inside, in my opinion. Judge Van Dyke, the Ninth Circuit, did a dissent video on YouTube regarding Duncan v. Bonta, where California argues that a magazine is an accessory not covered by the 2A. The judge argues, where does it stop? I agree with that. That'd be worth checking out. I should check that out. Oh, nice. Yeah, folks, look, if you train with us, you bought stuff from us, if you want to help this company grow, we'd really appreciate Google reviews or, obviously talk to your friends and things like that. Those help. Those really do. People do look at those. I have bought several gunsmithing tools because good. Continue. I mean, the more stuff you can do on your own, the better off you are. You can shut your damn common mouth 301 meg every day. Yeah, you won't be shooting further than someone with 300 PRC, and you won't get better BCs than someone with 300 PRC. 300 PC versus Norma is a better debate. I agree. So I'll just tell you now, like if you can afford 300 Norma has better ballistics than 300 PRC. You can go a little heavier in bullet weights with 300 Norma, but I still think it's marginal. The problem that I have with 300 Norma is that it's much more expensive. It's also harder to find off the shelf if you're just using factory ammo. So for me, I really like 300 PRC because it's pretty darn close to 300 Norma. It's significantly cheaper to load, and components are cheaper. So anyways, that's my thought on 300 PRC. That being said, if you like to hand load, if you don't care about cost, and with it, to me, I won't say it's nominal, and I won't even say it's insignificant, but a very small increase in performance is what you're getting with 300 Norma versus 300 PRC. That's my thoughts on it. And components are easier to find. And again, if and when you need factory ammunition, I think 300 PRC is definitely a better option. The R30 is awesome. R30 is one of the best suppressors out there, especially for precision, as my last video demonstrated. I agree. And I'll tell you, there's a reason right now we're like 14, 16 months back ordered on Thunder Beast arm suppressors, which was the whole reason I started looking into KGM. I do think that KGM are right there with Thunder Beast. They're cheaper. They're definitely much, number one, we have a store full of them. They're selling them all the time, but we can get those in about a week or two. And then we still have we placed a huge order. We still have a lot from that order. We can't order and get in Thunder Beast arm suppressors fast enough. That's just a fact. Like Ann said, please hit the like button if you haven't done so. Again, just like I said at the beginning of this, folks, we'd love for you to subscribe, and we'd also like for you to hit that notification button. But if you are going to hit that notification button, please select all. I can't tell you, number one, YouTube will only notify you. That's the reason for those different options, right? They're only going to notify you if it is a monetized video. Lots of our videos, lots of our live streams aren't monetized. So even though you think you're subscribed and you hit the alert icon, they're not going to alert you when we have a video most of the time. And even I still have a lot of people say, hey, look, I'm subscribed. I've hit the notification button. I'm still not getting alerts. So take that for what it is. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Florida Planking. Thank you. See, Jeff, everyone knows except for you, you freaking FUD. Jeff is a FUD. He is like the king of FUDs. This is why he says dumb things like 300 Win Mag and 300 PRC, or 300 Win Mag is better than 300 PRC. It's not even close. We'll see you later at the range. Be safe out there. That's what I'm talking about. FUD AF. Yeah, going back to this, I know I'm, way behind on the comments, and we keep going back and forth to some of these things. It's just the nature of these live streams. Yeah, you can do a lot more with smaller forces, right? We could be doing a lot more. We need to separate the wheat from the chaff in our military as it is, and we could increase the standards for special operations, and the current standards that we have for our combat arms should be way up there with special operations, as far as I'm concerned. I want to look something up. I want to get real quick. I am going to shoot my friend because somebody's talking about auto safety series. Folks, just because somebody sells something doesn't mean it's legal. And what I am responding to is this right here. I will get a direct, in case I'm wrong. So anyways, I'm going to get an answer for you on that. Make sure that I'm not putting out bad information and you guys aren't putting out bad information. I will be doing some low development on 300 PRC. If you guys haven't noticed, I haven't put out very many videos. We just came back from XP Long Range. I was there for 2 weeks between prep and teardown and, doing a level 1, 2, and 3. We were basically there for 2 weeks, came back, and I'm still catching up with a bunch of stuff. And I haven't made any videos since then. Barely had time, and then we had some family stuff. That's why I'm down here in Georgia, for those that you weren't here at the beginning of this live stream. Anyways, Florida Planking is right. 300 PRC, I shoot 2,500 yards with cutting edge solid 2 or 30 grain bullets. Try that with 300 Win Mag. You can't do it, Jeff. You can't do it. Paul, we had some medical issues with Summer's family that we had to come down here and respond to. What's your thoughts on the Sig Cross Magnum? Look, I don't want to bash a brand. Here's my thoughts on the Sig Cross and many other rifles like it. All these production rifles. The fact is, you can get a lot better rifles for the money. That's my thought on that. And that being said, the Sig Cross is a great rifle. Speaking of Paul has a Sig Cross. I think he has the PRS version. Really good rifle. He shot really well with it. It does well. Can you get better rifles? Significantly better rifles for the money? Yes. That's my thought on that. The difference between 7 PRC and 300 PRC depends on what you're using it for. I personally would go with 300 PRC. You see a significant increase in performance and distances that you can shoot with 300 PRC. There's not a big difference in price between 7 PRC and 300 PRC, whether we're talking about components, brass, or buying factory ammunition. There's also not a significant difference in like recoil, but there is a significant difference in capabilities. So that's my thought between 7 PRC and 300 PRC. Yeah, this is a real problem. John Walsh hits the nail on the head. Unfortunately, our high schools are full of fat ass kids who couldn't run a mile. It's true. Like, physical fitness in this country, especially for our youth, is a really bad place. Yes, sir, you were. I'm sure that's Craig. Yep. We're good on that. Thanks, Craig. Area 419 in the chat, folks. Again, not just saying this because they're there in the chat. I can't say it enough, man. We want you to buy everything from us. All the Area 419 stuff you can get from us. Definitely do so. Can't say it enough. There's a lot of things behind the scenes, different conversations I've had, and other things I know about Area 419, how much they support this community and all this stuff. Like, what a great company, and we're proud to be a dealer for them. Yeah, Florida Plankin, I'm going to talk to you hard about some additional load development. I'm waiting on my own 300 PRC rifle to get in. I'll definitely be doing some videos on load development. I'll definitely got a lot of 300 PRC content that I want to get into, including possibly some specific ELR rifle builds, which I think will be fun. John, I know what that's. I'm assuming you're being sarcastic. Yeah, Jeff's just stirring the pot. I already know that. I already saw some text over here on my phone coming up. Jeff's just talking smack over there in the comments to get people talking. All right, so the last thing I want to talk about before I get off here, because it's about the storm, is for those I've talked to you guys, and we can get into it. So you guys know that we've been a Masterpiece Arms rifle dealer for a really long time, exclusively, by the way, and it's because I get a lot of opportunity to test other rifles, different brands, different companies. We used to sell a lot of other different brands, different companies, and I got to tell you, MPA, there's just nothing else out there that gives you the bang for the buck. The Masterpiece Arms PMR Pro 2 rifle is the best long-range precision value on the market, point blank, period. The way that is built, the components that it's used, all of those things. And I would say that whether or not I was a dealer or not. I mean, that's just a fact. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate that. Updated the SOT in the next couple of weeks. Yep, no problem on that. I'll get that sent to you tonight. One of the things that we're doing right now, I've been wanting to do, because, again, being an exclusive dealer for MPA does a few things on the positive side. Great to work with them. Love that company. Love Phil. Love some of the guys over there, Keith, Woody, a bunch of great great folks over at Team MPA as far as, the build side of that. What we have done recently, and I've been wanting to do for a while, is we're basically launching our own line of precision rifles. And there's a couple of different reasons. Number one, I want to fill some of the niches that MPA doesn't. And I just want to do some other things and offer some other options and things that MPA doesn't, right? So, there's not a really good, there's people out there that want a precision hunting rifle. And there's other guys out there that want a precision rifle, but don't necessarily want the options that MPA offers and things like that. So what we're doing, we have now launched Paramount Precision Rifle Works. So that's what we're going to be doing, and I'm going to be getting our first barreled actions in just a couple of days. They're on our way. These are going to be composed of Bartline barrels. Right now we're strictly using Bartline, and there's some different options going on with that, but Defiance actions, Impact actions, and the American Rifle Company Coup de Grace actions. There's some other great actions out there. I may expand those, but currently that's what we're doing. We invested heavily into this, folks. I'm talking, we bet the farm on this, and I think we're going to do well, and we're going to appreciate your guys' support. We are still going to be building, what this does. Number one, it gives us some more customization options. We want to be able to build some hunting rifles that are really nice. That, whether you want a lightweight rifle or something a little heavier that's more leaning toward precision, or something that's more leaning toward precision and lightweight, as much as we can blend those two factors, right? So that's what we got going on. The gunsmith that I have cutting chambers and turning these barrels is by far one of the best gunsmiths in the country. He's a personal friend of mine. He has been world national champion for in F class. He is more of an F class shooter, but he also makes a lot of some of the best F class rifles, full rifles on the market. I talked to him. We kind of worked out a deal, and these are going to be some of the best rifles out there, period. We wanted to go with the best components. Now, there will be some customization options available to you. One of the big things that we're doing with this, too, is you can get a barreled action with the action that you want, the barrel length that you want, obviously the caliber that you want. We did order some carbon barrels. I'll talk a little bit more about those from Bartline, by the way. So we're going to be waiting on those. But if you would like a custom rifle from us, shoot us an email. We can talk about it. Ultimately, what we're going to be doing is we're going to get away from customization as much, and we're going to be building out rifles and offering them as is, or building out and ordering barreled actions, and then you can choose whatever chassis. So currently we're a Masterpiece Arms dealer on the chassis. We are a MDT. We offer MDT chassis, KRG chassis, Woox chassis, which I'll have a video coming very soon with the Woox chassis. Dude, I love those chassis. We'll talk more about that. And then we just became an XLR dealer as well. One of the things that we will be offering in the very near future, this is probably 4 to 6 months, is we will be offering NRL rifles that are out of the box, ready to go, that are going to meet those weight classes, 12 pounds and 16 pounds. Literally, we've weighed everything out. We guarantee that with the bipods, the optic that we have, all those things, hey, you can take this out of the box. If you want to go compete in lightweight, you're going to be able to do that. If you're going to compete in the heavy open, you'll be able to do that. It's going to meet those requirements. So that's one of the things that we're working on. So if you guys, again, we've invested heavily in this. So right now in the initial part of this, number one, a couple things that you guys need to know. Number one, we have actions that we're selling individually on our website. You can go purchase those right now. We will have barreled actions that we're offering, and then we will have complete rifles, and then of course barreled actions. And then you tell us that, hey, you know what, Gary, I want this chassis, I want this optic. We can build it out, whatever you want, right? But after we get this kind of in place, I want to get away from these lead times. I hate it, folks. I hate, when we sell a custom MPA that is waiting 14 to 16 weeks, and trust me, I get it. People are calling up, and they're like, hey, Gary, that said 14 to 16 weeks, which, by the way, it also says, it's just an estimate. So when it's 16 weeks in, people are freaking pissed at us. And I am sick of it. I really am. I love you guys. I love all of our clients. But, when people are calling up pissed off at us or sending us emails day after day after day, not only is it a time suck, it's just an emotional suck. And what I want to be able to do is start offering rifles ready to go right out of the box. And they're on the website. You can order them. We're going to put them in the mail as soon as we can, get them to your FFL, or you can come pick them up or whatever else. But the best components, there will be guaranteed. Look, these rifles, without a doubt, will shoot sub-quarter MOA, but it depends on you and your ammunition. But these rifles all of these rifles will have the capability of doing that, just depending on you. So, you can't buy a rifle and buy skill. You can't buy a rifle and expect shitty ammo to perform well. So there's some elements of that we need to work through, but those rifles will be able to shoot sub-quarter. So anyways, folks, let us know. We already have multiple orders in from clients that are doing full custom builds. If there's something that you're wanting, let us know. We'd be happy to help you with that. If you just want action, you just want a barreled action, all these things, we're going to be greatly expanding our offerings in all of those arenas. So, that's kind of where we're at. Summit Point, West Virginia. All right, I've been reading any of these comments. Yeah, that's what we're going to be doing. All right, so listen, Jason Fairbanks and Jeff, a auto safety seer, owning that. This is the direct quote. They be machine guns. This is from the guys at the ATF. It would be a conversion device. So that is a fact. I'm just telling you right now, and they're not going to go knocking door to door and all those other things, but just understand that if you have a conversion device, an auto safety seer is a conversion device, that is considered a machine gun. I know it's kind of counterintuitive, but that itself, you cannot own a single gun. And if you have these conversion devices, that is a machine gun in of itself. And you would be charged with owning a machine gun without, obviously, the proper hoops that you should have jumped through. So that is from the ATF. So you can take that for what it is. Just saw something about brother says he's holding 10 counts of, yeah, like, yeah. Yeah. So those are without a doubt machine guns. I don't know about the HK device. And again, there's lots of companies that will send you devices that either they don't know the law, they don't care about the law, or whatever else. We see this all the time. And these are conversations I have with my buddy at the ATF. And I'm just telling you right now that those, without a doubt, you better do your homework with that before you start purchasing those, and definitely before you mention them on the interwebs. All right, folks. Well, we covered a lot tonight. Like I said, I hope the big beautiful passes. I hope that suppressors are taken off the NFA. I hope at least we get a $0 tax stamp. But man, I'm just not. I'm not holding my breath on this. I think this is one of those things that if the weak Republicans, and all of them are effing weak, especially when it comes to the Second Amendment, look, they're just freaking weak as all get out. If and when the Democrats push back on this, that is going to be the first thing that they jettison from this bill. There's lots of problems. Look, Elon's been talking about it. Other people have been talking about it. This is a huge, massive spending bill. And I disagree with a lot of what's going on in there. The pragmatic side of me says that if Democrats had the House, the Senate, and the executive branch, it would be much, much worse. And there'd be probably, instead of a possible expansion of rights, there'd be a lot more infringements of rights. That's my glasses half full take on that. But I wouldn't hold my breath on it. I wouldn't make any decisions on any of this stuff. And if you want suppressors, go get them, man. Hopefully this passes. Worst case scenario, you wasted $200 that you didn't have to waste. I don't know. Maybe in the process of all this, they'll refund you. I wouldn't hold my breath on that either. But that's my take on all that stuff. Hopefully that was helpful. Yeah. So it is what it is. Also, if you're interested in building a custom rifle with us and you want one of the best rifles possible, again, shoot us an email, services@ParamountTactical.com. Some of this stuff is already on the website. More will be going up, but what it's going to be really cool is us building our own rifles, having control of the process, being able to offer them, put them on the website, and then immediately selling them without any sort of wait time or anything like that. If you do order a custom from us, obviously you can expect some lead time, some wait times. We're still waiting on some components, depending on what you got. I got a bunch of barreled actions coming in. Most of those are 6.5 Creedmoor. So if that's something you're interested in, let us know, and we can take it from there. But anyways, folks, thanks for tuning in. Wish you all the best. But until next time, stay armed, stay ready. We'll talk to you.